Hello, welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. Today we are going to be trying out the new Miss Dior eyeshadow quints. These are for fall 2025. They did release 3 of these and I purchased 2 of them. Now they do also come in these cute little sleeves to distinguish the different palettes as well. Now I picked up Shocking Pink and Bold Black. The other shade variation that they have is called Wild Beige, and I honestly felt like that was kind of just a cross between Brown Cashmere and Rose Organza from the Canage palettes that I reviewed recently. So I didn't grab that one, but I did grab these 2. Now these are limited edition. So these are adorned with the Miss Dior motif, a symbol of freedom embodying the bold spirit and pop of energy of the Dior woman. It is available in 3 new harmonies, and each palette is supposed to contain 3 different finishes. We have matte, satin, and pearly. So I did already test out the Bold Black palette. So they just have the standard black packaging on the inside. Now I wanted to get this one because something about this color story seemed a little bit unique for me. And when I looked at this color story, I wasn't 100% sure immediately what I wanted to do with it. So I thought that sounds like the perfect one to pick up because to me that says that this might be a little bit more unique in my collection. Now I'll pop up the swatches, and it is a very pretty color story. Again, it's kind of different from a lot of other things that I have. It does have this sort of sagey green. We do have a pop of gold. We have a black. We also have this very pearly white, and then this pink that kind of borders on a little bit bronze. And I do think it's a really, really pretty color story. Again, even looking at the swatches, I'm not 100% sure what I wanted to do with this particular color story. And then looking at Shocking Pink, this one is the one with the pink sleeve. But opening up this palette, this one has some really pretty pinky shades. I do love some pinks, and we also have some taupey browns along the bottom. I'll pop up the swatches, and initially I'm a little concerned because the 2 very light shimmers on the top really don't look very different at all. So I was a little concerned about that. We will test it out and see for ourselves today. So let's jump in to the look I created yesterday with the Bold Black Quint, and then we can get into Shocking Pink, and then toward the end I will show you some swatch comparisons and we can get my final thoughts on these quints. So to start with the Bold Black Quint, I really had no idea what I wanted to do with this one. So I actually just started with that sort of light beige in the bottom corner, and I started buffing this one into the crease, and then I just kind of dragged it all over the lid. Then I went in on the outer corner with that sage green, and I kind of just worked this one on that outer corner. I was able to build this one, but again, it's also a satin, and it was still very, very light, and I really did have to work to build that shade. And then after that, I went into that sort of pinky bronze in the very top corner, put this one all over the lid. I used a finger for this, and I felt like that was the best application at the end. And then I went in with the little sponge tip applicator that comes with this quint, and I went into that pearly white, and I put that one on the inner corner, and I thought it looked so, so pretty. Truly the most perfect inner corner highlight shade. And then finally, to wrap this look up, I went in with an angled brush, and I used that black as a liner. And I thought this was a really great liner shade. And this black is a really, really nice black. Where I was having issues with pigmentation in the satin shades, the black really didn't give me that issue, and it was very easy to work with, and it gave me the right amount of pigment. And this is the final look. I thought it looked pretty nice at the end. There was a couple of times in the middle of creating this look that I nearly just stopped everything and took it off so I could start over, but I decided to push through and trust the process. And I'm glad I did because I ended up liking this look. Would I create it again? I'm not 100% sure, but I ended up liking how it came together. All right, now that we have gone through Bold Black, let me zoom you in and we can get to creating a look with Shocking Pink. All right, now this palette I am excited for. I love pinks. I love browns. This sort of bright pink right in the center. I don't know if it's going to be my favorite, but we're going to try it out anyway. So I think I'm just going to start with this taupe in the bottom corner. I just think it's really, really pretty. Again, I do believe these bottom shades are the two satins, and then that bright pink in the middle is the true matte in the palette. So I'll just start adding this one to the crease. And this brown is a really, really nice brown with these pinky shades. I was kind of noticing that when I was swatching everything out, because initially looking at the shades in the palette, I'm just seeing browns and pinks. But then when you sort of put them on the skin and you can see the different undertones of the shades, you can understand why they're paired together. But I will say with the other Quint, I was getting a little bit frustrated because I felt like I was having a really hard time getting much pigmentation from it. Okay, I'm not 100% sure the direction I want to go in yet, but I am going to grab this middle shade with a different brush, and I am going to very lightly put this one on the outer corner. I'm not 100% sure what I'm doing with it quite yet, but I think I want it on that outer corner for now. Making sure to keep it lower than that taupe shade from the outer corner. This one is actually giving me a fair bit of pigment. This is definitely letting me build it really, really nicely. So the matte in this palette is of course the bright pink, and in the other palette it was the black. I think the pink and the black are both really nice formulas. I don't think they're exactly the same as what is in the Quintage palettes. The formula in the Quintage palettes is my favorite Dior formula. It's just so incredibly creamy and beautiful, easy to work with. It's just such a dream. I don't feel like this is that creamy. It is still very, very easy to work with. I'm just going back into the brush I used for the crease just to sort of blend those edges a little bit. I didn't pick up any more shadow or product. Okay, just going with the brush, I want to go into this shade right here. And I think I'm going to use this one all over the lid. And this is quite pretty. It is applying pretty nicely with a brush as well. It does look really, really pretty with that brighter pink. This is another one of those looks that's a very trust the process kind of moment. Now on the other side, I do want to pick that up with a finger because I want to see if I can get a better payoff that way. A little bit, but not much. I think you could still safely go in with your brush. So I'm just going to do that. I can tell you right now, I do prefer this pink palette to the other one. I do like this color story more, but I'm feeling like I'm getting more pigment from it. I'm just getting more from it in general. Even the shade I used in the crease, that satin, is behaving better than the satins from the bold black. I just felt like they really lacked pigment in that first palette. I'm just going to grab that sponge tip applicator and I'm going to go into this shade right here. This is the sparkliest shade. And I'm going to start placing this on the inner corner and sort of bring it up a little bit. I think it's going to sort of bring everything to life. And also really packing it into that inner corner. I think that looks really pretty. I will say the Miss Dior embossment is in these shadows pretty well. I don't think that embossment is going to disappear the first time you use the Quint, which is something I actually don't love about the YSL pods. I feel like those shadows are so soft, the embossment is essentially gone immediately. The YSL embossment is, not the quilting, but that is one thing I can say. All right, that looks really pretty. I actually really like how this look is coming together, but I do want to go in with a smaller liner brush, and I think I want to use this as a bit of a liner. Just keeping that pretty close to the lash line. And again, this satin is much more pigmented than the one in the other palettes. I just felt like those satins were so light. All right, so let me quickly pop on some mascara. I'll come back. I'll show you the finished final look and we can get into some comparisons. All right, so here is the finished final look and I really like how it came together. This is definitely a look that I would create anyway. I just think it's really pretty. It's very girly, very Barbie pink, very me. So I'm happy with this one for sure. I can already tell you that I do prefer the shocking pink quint over the bold black. So let's get into these comparisons. So first we'll talk about shocking pink because it is fresh on my mind and I really like this color story. I think it's really pretty. I like how the look came together. Surprisingly, I was kind of worried about that middle pink shade, but I actually really like how it came together. I really like the browns in here too, and there's something about this brown that has that sort of undertone to it that is very, very complementary with the pink. So I thought that was really pretty. I just really enjoyed this color story. Now, the first palette I want to compare this to is another Dior quint. This is the D Floral quint. This is from, I believe, spring last year. I have to be careful with how I hold this one up because my shades will fall out. This one is unfortunately broken. So you can see there is a little bit of a similarity in that both of these have these sort of lighter taupey browns. We have some of these pinky shimmers, and then we have a brighter pop of pink in the very center. The shocking pink is of course much bolder and brighter, and it is a true matte, whereas in the D Floral quint it is a satin. Now I do complain about this quint quite a bit because it is broken. That just frustrates me because it is so expensive, but I always end up loving the looks that come out of this quint, and I always just think they're so pretty and so light and feminine, and I feel like the shimmers have just the right amount of sparkle to them. And then popping up the swatches, I feel like the shimmers in the D Floral are so much more impactful than the shocking pink shimmers. I feel like this shimmer up here is really the only one that gave us much impact at all. But I feel like shocking pink definitely gives us more depth. So really just depends which way you want to go. I don't know if D Floral is still available, but again, if you have that one, maybe you could skip this particular one. It really just depends which way you want to go. D Floral has a lot more sparkle and impact, whereas shocking pink is quite a bit more dimensional. Now, a palette in my collection that actually got me pretty close is from MAC. This is one of their connecting color eyeshadow palettes in Rose Lens. Now, this of course has 6 shades compared to Dior's 5, and it is quite a bit more affordable. It is MAC, so it is still pricey, but not as much as Dior. And seeing them side by side, there is definitely some similarities here. I feel like we have a very, very similar bright pop of pink. The MAC does give us this more cream colored matte shade to sort of blend those edges a little bit more, and the browns and taupes are all those more satiny type of shades. But popping up the swatches, I got really, really close with Rose Lens. I feel like there are some differences, of course, in the browns, whereas the MAC, all of the browns are more satiny shades. There's satins in here too, but these satin MAC shades are much more pronounced. I think the pinks look very, very similar, and even the shimmers, though not identical, are still very similar. Honestly, I like the formula in the MAC more. You get more pigment, you get more impact in general, and I just feel like you get a lot more for what you're paying when you go with the MAC. Again, the formulas in these connecting color palettes is easily some of their best. They're just very pigmented, but also very high quality and easy to work with. The shimmers in MAC palettes, I've always said, are a little bit drier, but this palette is really nice, and you can get nearly identical looks from the Rose Lens that you can from this Dior quint. I also really quickly wanted to compare this next to the Natasha Denona Retro. Now, the Retro did not give me that super bright pink, but in terms of the brown shades from the Dior and the 2 shimmer shades, I was able to get very, very close. And I'll pop up the swatches. You can see Natasha's shimmers are so much more impactful, and the mattes are a lot more pigmented. I do still love the Retro palette. This one's been around for a while now, and it's still one of my favorite ever Natasha Denona palettes. I just love this color story. That MAC palette got us unbelievably close though. So I think this is pretty, but if you have Rose Lens in particular from MAC, you can definitely skip this. If you went for the Defloral Quint, you can probably skip this. And if you have the Retro palette, you have essentially 4 out of 5 of these shades. For sure. Okay, hopping over to Bold Black. Now, I did think it was kind of interesting that they named this palette Bold Black when we've just got the one black shade and all the rest are super, super light. However, getting into these comparisons, when I was looking at this color story, I kind of sat here with myself for a second because I thought, I don't think I have another color story like this in my collection. This is definitely more unique for my particular collection. I do think it gives us a really nice sort of fall leaning vibe to it. But then I pulled out the Retro Glam from Natasha Denona because I thought this might actually be the only other palette that gives me that same sort of sagey green, because that sage green is really what makes this unique. And side by side, you can definitely see where I was going with that, I think. And now popping up the swatches, of course, I wasn't able to get shade for shade dupes. I don't have that black or that more peachy pink in the Retro Glam, but the overall vibe of the palette, pretty similar. I was definitely able to get a very similar effect. I was able to find this sort of sagey green, which I was really proud of because I didn't think I had that anywhere else. The overall color story, yeah, I think you could create some very, very similar looks with it. And of course, with Natasha, you're going to get a lot more impact. You're going to get a lot more depth from the shimmers, but once again, the mattes are also going to be much more pigmented. Then I pulled out the Urban Decay Wild Greens, and this made me laugh because I haven't thought about this palette in such a long time. It's never been a favorite of mine from Urban Decay, and now I've used it twice in the span of a week, I think. So this is the Wild Greens next to the Dior Bold Black palette. Once again, we don't have the black, but popping up the swatches, I was able to actually get some very, very similar shades. The shimmers were all quite similar, and honestly, the Urban Decay actually gave me a little bit more impact, more pigment, a little bit more sparkle, and that was kind of my main complaint about this palette. I just felt like it didn't do enough for me, especially compared to some of my other palettes, and now it's the more impactful between this and the Dior. So if you have Wild Greens or Retro Glam, you're going to be able to create some very, very similar looks, especially Wild Greens, because I feel like that one got really, really close. And lastly, I also wanted to pull out the Nouveau from Anastasia Beverly Hills, because my main thought with this was that sort of sage green from this palette with the shade Wings from ABH. And then popping up the swatches, again, I got kind of similar. So I didn't have a black, but I did have a very deep brown that is so pigmented, it ends up looking a little bit black. I have that golden shade. Wings matched up really, really well with this sort of sage green. I wasn't able to dupe that white pearly shade. And then the sort of peachy pink I didn't have identically either in Nouveau. But once again, I think it's one of those color stories that even though it's not shade for shade, you're going to get some pretty similar looks overall. So I knew that Shocking Pink was not going to be a unique color story to my collection, but I really ended up finding some very, very similar color stories within my collection to both of these palettes. And I know the Wild Beige palette, that one is definitely not unique. There are a lot of similarities to those. I feel like that won't be a good cross between Brown Cashmere and Rose Organza. I don't feel like this is the same formula that is in the Canage palettes. Those are they're just too good. They are the best Dior has done. This feels more like their typical limited edition Quint formula, which is a good formula. It's not my favorite of all time. I would say this is much more similar to the formula that's in the Defloral Quint that I have. So it's not a bad formula. I'll definitely get some really pretty looks out of it and I'll enjoy playing with it, but it's not going to rank in my top favorite formulas. I do like Shocking Pink quite a bit better. I just feel like the shades sort of built up for me a little bit more. They gave me a little bit more definition. I feel like I got more sparkle from the shimmers in here, and I feel like the shades played much better together. And then going into Bold Black, I didn't feel like this is the most intuitive color story for me personally. I, for some reason, just couldn't necessarily wrap my brain around this particular selection of shades. I think it ended up turning out well together. I think if I was using this quint again, I would probably pair the brown and the peach. I would use the green with the white a lot, but I don't know that I would create another look where I was using all of the shades. I could, and I certainly liked the look I created with this, but it honestly just wasn't the most intuitive color story for me personally. And I was surprised that I was actually able to find some very similar color stories in my collection. I really did not think I could find this, but I did. I also just found that the bold black color story, the satins in here really didn't want to give me much pigment. I felt like I really had to work to get it from here, so I just really didn't love that either. I kind of wish there was just a little bit more. I think Shocking Pink will definitely build up and give you that pigment, whereas Bold Black just doesn't really. But the black in here is great. So these are pretty. I think you can get some really nice looks from them. The formula is not bad. I do think Shocking Pink is much better in terms of quality. The color stories aren't that unique at all, surprisingly, but overall, I think they're nice palettes. I think if you are wanting to splurge on a Dior quint, go for the Canage palettes. Those are by far the best quality, and I do think they're quite a bit better than these. These aren't bad, but they are their standard limited edition palette quality, whereas the Canage palettes are so good. I would go with those over these. I know they are coming out with their matte liquid blushes. I am planning to purchase a couple of those to test out. I do have the new powder that I've been testing as well. I haven't fully formed my thoughts on that yet, but I will share very soon. But let me know all of your thoughts down below. Are you planning to try these? Are you skipping them? Just let me know all of your thoughts. I love hearing from you guys so much. If you're new here, I hope you'll consider subscribing before you go. I do upload new videos every single week. Thank you again so very much for watching, and I will see you in my next one.